Hey everyone, I wanted to go over the new and extremely exciting news that we have for Monster Hunter Rise Sunbreak's 5th free title update as it makes its way to the Nintendo Switch and PC Steam. PlayStation, Xbox, and PC Windows players will have to wait a little bit longer after Sunbreak drops on those consoles on April 28th. And today what we're going to be checking out is a brand new developer update specifically from director Suzuki, confirming that yes indeed we will be having an entire batch of new talismans making their way through the game. This is something that they had teased a little bit of throughout these weekly type of updates that they have been giving us pretty much for about a month and a half now. Right after the 4th free title update actually ended up dropping, they started to give us details regarding the 5th one and the final update. And essentially a few weeks back, maybe about a month and a week or so ago, they told us that they would be adding 2 brand new crafting or melding options that will, simply put, change the way that we're crafting talismans and pretty much make all of your current talismans obsolete, since not only these new talismans that you will be crafting will be using more powerful materials and rarer materials, but also provide you with the option to use some of those non-attainable skills that you have right now through melding, and some of those will finally become available through essentially talismans. So your entire setup is going to be changing, and that is what we're going to be checking out today. So essentially director Suzuki took to social media, both on their Japanese and North American Twitter accounts. The post pretty much reads the same. There is a little bit of a translation difference that I do want to point out afterwards, but pretty much the Japanese one is no different than the North American post, so we're going to disregard the Japanese one for now. I'll circle back to one little quick thing in a little bit. But essentially in the North American post that they shared this morning, they mentioned that as part of the 5th free title update, we're adding Curious Melding Vigor to the melding pot, which uses afflicted materials. We'll also add Curious Melding Cyclus, which allows you to make new talismans by using talismans created from afflicted materials. Suzuki, director of Monster Hunter Rise Sunbreak. And then of course they attach an image alongside that where we get to see the 2 brand new melding options. First and foremost, you had Anima, Reincarnation, and of course Aurora, which was added later on. I believe it was maybe the first free title update or something like that. And now we see Curious Melding Vigor, which will cost you 300 points. Pretty normal, and this will be the new standard of melding, since Aurora targets one specific skill that you might be after. Reincarnation is already recycling aforementioned talismans that you already have, and Anima was pretty much the one that everyone was using originally. Now Curious Melding Vigor will be using those aforementioned afflicted materials, pretty much everything that you get from Anomaly Investigation Quest, which presumably people have tons of those stacked up in their inbox and they're not necessarily making good use of them because you're not using all of them for your current Curious crafting and the entire RNG endgame that we currently have. And of course you also see the brown option, the Curious Melding Cyclus, which is only going to be applicable for recycling those talismans that you picked up from Curious Melding Vigor. It is just the same, but only basically making sure that if you got a lot of crappy talismans from Vigor, Cyclus will be able to go ahead and finally, recycle those. One of the quick things that I do want to address regarding the Japanese post, everything reads the same except the names. They call it Afflicted Materials Pot Haki. This would be the equivalent of Vigor, Curious Melding Vigor, and Curious Melding Cyclus is actually called in Japanese Afflicted Charm Pot Ring. So Haki would be the normal one, Ring is the recycling one. So I thought that was a little bit of an interesting translation thing, but of course that's just what it means in the entire process of translating or whatever. So Vigor will pretty much give you access to brand new talismans, and of course access to, and this is something that we have seen through the Datamine. This is something that they're not necessarily confirming through the post that they shared today, but we do know that some skills will become especially unique available through Vigor and Cyclus. Now Previously, when we had just access to melding anima and melding reincarnation, we know that melding reincarnation, since you were recycling already available skills from like aforementioned talismans that you had crafted, but they weren't necessarily very good, you did have a better chance to be able to have like better results on trying to craft a very specific talisman, but of course it was still a lot RNG based, so you had better chances to be able to have, you know, a more rarer, more valuable god talisman, if you will, a god charm, through that specific method. We don't know if this is going to be the same thing this time around. Maybe Curious Melding Cyclist will have the same table as Vigor will do, so therefore you end up getting the same talismans, or there's a chance, or a better chance, that you end up maybe getting 4-3-2 or something like that, with still the same talismans that you would normally expect, but what you usually get at 3-2-1 on Vigor. The same would be thing for Anima. Aurora doesn't get that. I believe it gets 3-1-1 or 4-0-0 when it comes to deco slots. Maybe Cyclist actually gets a 4, access to a 4th decoration, you know, bonus instead of a 3 as a max. Maybe that will be the way that it goes. We don't know that. That is just speculation on my part, but what we do know is that there will be some skills that have been part of pretty much the recent wave of armors that will be making an appearance in Vigor. They will simply just be tied to that. Cyclists presumably will also have access to them. Whether you can get a higher number for them or not, we don't know. But that is how things stand as of right now. Now, what I do find interesting is just to see what kind of brand new entire changes this is going to bring to the way that we are currently, you know, setting up our entire armor sets. Of course, talismans, and this is one of the things that I said before, talismans, when you're, you know, not necessarily crafting armor sets tied to just the unique skills that an armor set might have, specifically from a monster, talismans will cover a lot of the weaknesses that you might not necessarily have if you know, maybe the armor set that you're crafting around doesn't necessarily have that many decoration slots to kind of cover for the rest of the skills that you might want, you know, whenever you put it through those calculators that a lot of people use. So it'll be interesting to see just how different the god charm tier that we end up expecting will be different from Vigor and Cyclist. It'll be interesting to see just how varied it will be, and to see just the final options that we end up getting. Again, whether it goes 3-1 for Vigor, 4-3-2, which would be amazing to see. For Cyclists, we're just gonna have to wait and see. And of course, on top of that, a randomly RNG based skill is gonna bring the fact that melding Aurora is gonna go by the wayside. Now, a lot of people were already still just using Aurora by default now, since it was introduced, and it basically gives you access to a lot of really good charms, but of course not the best decoration slots. This time we're pretty much going back to anima and reincarnation, everything RNG based. You cannot pick your skill, the skill that you're going to be earning back, but of course, you know, that is kind of like the given trade-off. We're gonna have to wait and see which one, also like the aforementioned rarer skills that are not available through normal crafting right now, they're not available through, you know, talismans or charms. We'll see which ones actually end up making their way through this. And of course, then we also have the entire side of finally making full use of afflicted materials, anomaly investigation quests, which, you know, net you a pretty decent amount of these materials. If you're using them for, you know, curious crafting, all well and good, but not everyone is. You know, essentially a lot of people, once they make, you know, the setup, the armor that they have, they pretty much give up on that. You know, you don't continually re-roll forever unless you're crafting new pieces of armor and you're crafting new armor sets. And the price does get relatively steep after you make 1 or 2 armor sets, and after you make a couple, you just pretty much, you know, end up sticking with what you rolled. Hopefully you rolled something good, and a lot of people end up rolling some really good skills through, you know, curious crafting, so you don't really want to sit there and re-roll forever. So that is pretty much what we're looking at right now. Hopefully, you know, we get more details on this. Presumably we will, as the patch drops and after day 1, the free title update number 5, and of course the data mines are going to get us more details on this. But for now, this is pretty much all the information we have. If you happen to be brand new to my channel though, be sure to leave a like and subscribe. hit the bell to receive notifications when the videos go up, and as always, thank you so much for watching. See ya!